$340. That's your checking account balance on a Sunday night in October, the week you turn 33. Not before rent, not before the car payment. After everything. $340 and a folder on your phone labeled budget that you haven't opened in 4 months because you already know what's in it. You're not broke. You have a job. You have a degree you're still paying for. And somehow, at 33, you have less saved than you did the year you graduated college. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about this exact moment. It's not a crisis. It's a fork. And the next 7 years of your life get decided by what you do in the next 7 days. This is what actually happens, month by month, year by year, if you decide, right now, in your 30s, that you're done pretending the math will sort itself out. The night the numbers stop lying. It's a Sunday, and you're sitting on the couch with your laptop balanced on a pillow because your desk is covered in mail you haven't opened. You pull up your bank app for the 3rd time today, like checking it again will change the number. You make $71,000 a year. On paper, that sounds comfortable. In practice, it becomes $4,150 a month after taxes, and then it becomes something else entirely once you actually track where it goes. Rent, $1,475. Car payment, $410. Phone, internet, streaming services. You forgot you were still paying for, $126. Groceries that somehow cost more every single month, $460. Minimum payment on a credit card you opened just for emergencies 3 years ago, $195. You add it up twice because you don't believe it the first time. You're spending $210 more than you make most months, and you've been covering the gap with a card that's now carrying a balance you've stopped looking at. Nobody warns you that your 30s can feel like this. Not reckless, not irresponsible, just quietly underwater while looking, from the outside, completely fine. So here's the part that matters more than the guilt. You are not late. You are not finished. But you also don't get the luxury of pretending you have unlimited time left to start, either. The version of you that could have started at 24 and let 3 extra decades of compounding do the heavy lifting, that version is gone. And it's fine to feel that loss for exactly one evening. One evening. Because the next morning, something has to be different. At 33, if you commit $500 a month to a low-cost index fund, and it grows at a historically reasonable 8% average annual return, you're looking at roughly $850,000 by 63. That's not a guess or a sales pitch. That's what compounding actually does when you stop interrupting it. But $500 a month doesn't exist yet. Right now you have $340 and a $210 monthly hole. Before you can invest a single dollar, you have to close that gap. And closing it is the least glamorous work you'll ever do. The first $1,200. Financial creators love to talk about the starter emergency fund, usually some tidy number like $1,000. In your 30s, that number is a lie of convenience. A single ER visit, a transmission, a broken laptop you need for work. Any of those swallows $1,000 whole. So your real target is $1,200, and getting there feels less like saving and more like plugging a leak with your hands. You sell your old gaming console and 2 controllers you haven't touched in a year, $140. You cancel a streaming bundle and a subscription box you signed up for during a slow week at work, $87 back every month. You start bringing lunch 3 days a week instead of buying it, roughly $150 a month. You pick up a Saturday morning shift tutoring high schoolers in math, something you're overqualified for and slightly embarrassed to be doing again, another $260 a month. It's not exciting. Nobody claps. You don't post about it. But 6 weeks in, you check the account and it says $1,180. 12 days later, it crosses $1,200 and just sits there, untouched, for the first time in your adult life. You don't celebrate loudly. You just exhale a little differently. Automating the behavior. Before you feel ready at 34, You set up 2 automatic transfers on payday, $350 into a Roth IRA, $150 into a separate high-yield savings account you've nicknamed Do Not Touch. The money leaves before you see it, which turns out to be the entire trick. Willpower was never going to win against a checking account balance staring you in the face every day. Then, in February, your car makes a sound. Not a small sound, a deep mechanical groan from underneath the hood that gets worse every time you brake. You already know before the mechanic says it out loud. The transmission is failing. The estimate comes back at $2,450. 3 years ago, this bill would have flattened you. You would have put it on a card, told yourself 2 months, and watched it sit there for 8, growing interest the entire time. This time, you drive to the shop, hand over your debit card, and pay it from the emergency fund you built dollar by uncomfortable dollar. No interest, no spiral. You feel something unfamiliar standing in that waiting room. Not happy, exactly, but steady, like the floor finally stopped tilting. You spend the next 4 months rebuilding what you spent. You don't skip a single automatic transfer while you do it. The quiet shift nobody posts about. At 35, the market drops nearly 20% over 5 months. You watch a chunk of your account balance disappear on a screen in real time, and for the first 2 weeks you check it obsessively, the way you'd check a wound to see if it's healing. Then you stop checking. You keep the automatic transfers running. You buy shares at lower prices without fully trusting that it's the right move. By the following spring, the account has recovered, and then some. As if the drop were just weather passing through. But the real shift happens somewhere quieter than the stock chart. You're standing in a hardware store on a Saturday, replacing a coffee maker that finally died after 5 years. There's a $28 option and an $89 option with a longer warranty and a part that doesn't wear out as fast. 5 years earlier, you'd have grabbed the cheap one on reflex and left. Instead, you stand there and actually do the math. How many times you'll use it, how long it should last, what the real cost per use looks like stretched across years instead of one purchase. You buy the $89 one. Sitting in your car afterward, you notice something has changed in how your brain works. You're no longer thinking only about the next paycheck. You're thinking in years, without forcing it. The wiring rearranged itself somewhere along the way, and nobody announced it. That invisible shift is worth more than any single tip you'll ever hear about budgeting. The layoff that doesn't take you down with it. At 36, your company announces restructuring on a Tuesday afternoon, and by 4 p.m., the office has gone eerily quiet. Everyone suddenly very focused on their screens, nobody making eye contact in the break room. That night, you run your numbers with a calm you don't recognize in yourself. Your Do Not Touch fund now covers close to 4 months of expenses. Your investment account is untouched, a deeper layer you don't need to reach for yet. You're not invincible, but you're not one missed paycheck from disaster either, which is exactly where you were 3 years earlier. 2 weeks later, the layoffs land. 9 people. You're not one of them, but a coworker you'd had lunch with every week for 2 years packs a box into her car on a Wednesday morning. You feel relief and guilt about the relief at the same time, and underneath both, a colder clarity. This can happen to anyone, including you, someday. The only real insurance against it is time you've already bought yourself, sitting quietly in an account. You raise your target emergency fund from 4 months to 6. You don't touch the investments to do it. The friend with the new truck. Around this same year, your friend Devin buys a brand new truck. Fully loaded, financed over 72 months at close to 8% interest. He calls it basically the same as renting and changes the subject fast when you ask about the payment. You've done enough math by now to know what that truck actually costs him every month and roughly what he makes. The two numbers don't add up comfortably, but that's his story to live, not yours to fix. Riding in the passenger seat, you feel the pull of it anyway. The new car smell, the smoothness, the quiet hum of something engineered to feel like arrival. A voice in your head says you've been disciplined for years now, that maybe you've earned a little reward like this. You notice the voice. You don't argue with it or shame yourself for having it. You just let it pass, the way you'd let a weather system pass overhead. Desire was never the problem. Desire without a plan is. The real question is never, do I want this? It's, what does this actually cost me in time and options 5 years from now? A $58,000 truck financed at those terms ends up costing well over $70,000 total for a vehicle worth roughly half that by the time the loan is paid off. You get out at your building, walk to your 7-year-old sedan, and feel something that takes a second to name. Not envy, just clarity. The raise that doesn't disappear. At 36, you get a promotion you didn't fully expect. An $8,200 bump in salary, effective the following pay period. For years, extra money like this would have vanished into a slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer phone, dinners out that felt earned. This time, you do something different before you let yourself feel the raise at all. You sit down the same week it hits and increase your automatic transfers by $400 a month, split between your investment account and a new future goals fund you haven't quite named yet. You never let your day-to-day spending catch up to the new number on your pay stub. Your rent doesn't change. Your car doesn't change. From the outside, nothing about your life looks any different at all. But 6 months later, you glance at your accounts and realize you've quietly built an entire second stream of savings that didn't exist before, funded by money you never let yourself get used to having. A coworker mentions she just financed a new couch and a weekend trip on a store credit card to celebrate her own raise, and you don't say anything, but you recognize exactly the instinct she's following, the one you stopped following 2 years ago without even deciding to. You start picking up a small freelance project on the side too. Nothing dramatic, just some spreadsheet work for a former manager who remembered you were good at it. It adds roughly $300 a month. Inconsistent. Some months nothing at all. You don't count on it. You treat it as pure acceleration, dropped straight into the investment account the day it lands. Never mixed into your regular budget, where it could quietly disappear. None of this feels like a milestone in the moment. It feels like a series of small, boring decisions that nobody would ever put in a highlight reel. But a year later, when you check the math, this one habit, not inflating your lifestyle when the money grew, turns out to have done more for your future than almost anything else you've done up to this point. The number that feels like a foundation. On an unremarkable Thursday in your 37th year, you check the app between meetings out of habit, the way you'd check a plant to see if it's grown, and the balance reads just over $47,000. You go back into the meeting. You eat lunch at your desk. But the number sits with you all day, low and warm in the background. This one feels different from every milestone before it. Not a moment to be proud of so much as a foundation that's finally cured enough to hold weight. Everything from here builds on top of it. This is the entire reason you started at 33 instead of waiting until 43. Foundations need time, and you finally gave yours some. What wealth is actually for. At 38, your father calls on a weeknight, and you can hear him rehearsing the sentence before he says it. His furnace died in the middle of a cold snap, and the replacement quote came back at $5,400. He apologizes for even bringing it up. You tell him not to be sorry. You tell him you've got it. You transfer the money the next day without touching your investments, without opening a credit card, without losing a night of sleep over it. What stays with you isn't the $5,400. It's the sentence you said without hesitation. I've got it. 5 years earlier, helping him would have meant debt, or a quiet argument with yourself about whether you could really afford to be generous. This time, it just costs money. Not stability, not sleep, not your future. That's the moment you finally understand what all the automatic transfers and rebuilt emergency funds were actually for. Not a bigger number on a screen. Capacity. The ability to show up for the people you love without it costing you your own footing. The lonely part nobody posts about. By 39, your investment account earns more in a single year from growth alone than you contributed. Capital doing what capital does when you stop interrupting it. You're building wealth on weekends, on sick days, on days you don't even open the app. Your credit card balance has been at zero for over a year. Your student loans are gone. You have a maxed out Roth IRA and a small taxable brokerage account you started almost as an afterthought. And here's the part nobody puts in a highlight reel. You feel a specific kind of lonely. Most of the people you love aren't doing any of this. Some are in real financial pain that's hard to watch up close. Some earn more than you and spend all of it, confident that will work out fine until it doesn't. You've tried bringing it up gently, twice, and both times it went nowhere. People don't change their relationship with money because someone mentions index funds at dinner. They change it in their own dark kitchen, at their own late hour, when their own numbers finally get too uncomfortable to ignore. The same way yours did. You can't hand that moment to someone else. So you carry what you know quietly. Split the bill evenly, even when you ordered less. And don't perform your discipline as a personality trait. This part of the process looks like nothing from the outside. It's just a person at dinner, holding something private, and choosing to keep holding it anyway. The morning you turn 40. You wake up on your 40th birthday, and before coffee, before your phone, you lie there and think back to that Sunday on the couch. $340, a hole in your budget, a folder you were scared to open. Then you check the number. Just past $215,000. Not financially free, not a headline, but 40 years old with over $215,000 in real working wealth, built from a $210 monthly deficit, and one uncomfortable evening when you finally stopped looking away. The median American at 40 has a net worth somewhere around $35,000. You're sitting at roughly 6 times that, not because you inherited anything, not because of a single lucky break, but because you started, and then you kept starting again after every setback that tried to talk you out of it. Because you paid for a transmission in cash instead of on a card. Because you survived a round of layoffs without panic. Because you told your father, "I've got it," and meant it completely. Because you kept contributing when the market gave you every reason to stop. 8 years ago, you thought wealth would feel like a number on a screen. It doesn't. It feels like paying for a repair without your stomach dropping. It feels like sitting through a layoff announcement without your future collapsing along with your job. It feels like telling someone you love, "I've got it," and having that be completely true. Most of all, it feels like waking up one ordinary Tuesday and realizing your future stopped being something that happens to you. Somewhere in your 30s, without ever announcing it to anyone, it became something you were building on purpose. None of it happened in one dramatic moment. It happened in 100 small, unglamorous ones: a canceled subscription, a raise you didn't spend, a transmission paid for in cash, a phone call to your father that didn't turn into a spiral. Nobody was watching any of those moments happen. That's exactly why they worked. If you're in your 30s right now looking at your own version of that $340 balance, this isn't the moment to spiral. It's the moment to open the folder you've been avoiding. Start with the number that scares you the most. That's usually the one that matters. If this hit home, subscribe. Every week I break down exactly how ordinary people rebuild their financial lives from wherever they're starting. No hype, no shortcuts, just the math and the decisions behind it. And tell me in the comments, what's your $340 moment? I read everyone.